voices. We have a delegate here today who represents the Turkish government, the ruling AKP and President Erdogan. A representative, in other words, of a party and a president that used the democratic process to get into power, only to then systematically destroy the very democratic instruments they used to get there. A representative of a regime for whom democracy is just a vote, a regime that rules Turkey today by tyranny of the majority. One that has purged tens of thousands of people, including teachers, lawyers, judges, politicians, and journalists, from their jobs, their livelihoods, and the company of their families. I was born to two Turkish parents. I gave up my citizenship because of the government that this person represents. I do not visit the land I was born in today because I know what happens to people in Turkey who openly criticize President Erdogan, his party, and his government. I will not live in fear, but neither am I a martyr. Insulting Erdogan is a crime in Turkey, and he takes all criticism as insult. He takes journalism and democracy as an insult. The presence of his representative here today is an insult to democracy.
I would now like to ask the delegate Tuğrul Selmanoğlu'nu. He filed a motion of contradiction before. I accept the motion within the mentioned rules. Please come.
Mr. Balkan's presentation, I heard when he just called democracy ideology, and how he confuses this with the thought of people who think otherwise. So what is your idea of democracy if you don't even want to share the rostrum with somebody who thinks differently than you do? How do you recognize if somebody is a Democrat? And I think this position of yours shows that you are not a Democrat. If not, you wouldn't have a problem with me being here. Are you afraid of my opinion? Or do you have a problem that I would say anything against, as so often in the democratic and Western world, Turkey is being criticized? I am a member of the AKP, which you call undemocratic. What's your reasoning for doing so? Is it because of the state of emergency since the coup of last year? Why is it that Western powers can do something against terrorism, while in Turkey, which had over 5 times as many victims of terrorism over the last 30 years than all the Western countries together? Or is it because terror organizations which are terrorizing Turkey for decades, that they are being funded by the Western powers? Why don't you have a problem with the fact that since 21 they have the Patriot Act in the US, where people are sitting in Guantanamo imprisoned, which infringes the private lives of the people so much more than in Turkey? The US are being democratic and we are not. And why don't you, as a French person, don't have a problem with the state of exception in France, which has been ongoing for 2 years longer than in Turkey since the terror attacks in France? What kind of idea of democracy do you have? Is that the idea of democracy which the US wanted to bring to the Iraq with 1.5 million deaths in the war? Holland, which also took part in ethnic cleansing in Bosnia, are they democratic and we aren't? Is that the kind of democracy which is the so-called only democracy? Israel in the Middle East, which year by year is doing with the Palestinians in Gaza. So Israel is democratic and we aren't. Turkey has left this kind of democracy behind itself. In the old Turkey, Kurds were not allowed to talk, or these Alevites were not able to exercise their religion. Erdogan and the AKP has put an end to that in the name of democracy and humanism. Unfortunately, the mass media are just feeding you raw information against Islam, against Turkey, and against Erdogan, which has the objective to just make it impossible for Erdogan to keep in power. More humanitarian aid than the whole European Union. the Turkey, which you call undemocratic, has taken up 4 million refugees, 5 times more than all of the European Union. With Turkey is building bridges where the Western democracies are building barbed wire. So don't only talk in order to talk. Look into your cyborgs. I think you know more about the cyborgs than about democracy. So I would like to ask all of the people who are not informed, inform yourselves about Turkey. Inform yourselves about what's really happening there. And don't let the mainstream to push their opinion on you. And I hope that you will recognize who the real despots are and who the real democrats are. Don't ask the Western medias. Ask the poorest in this world about Erdogan. Ask the suppressed and people who are suppressed in this world what they think about Erdogan. Ask the millions of people to whom Erdogan has given a home, and you will see that you will change your opinion. You will see that Erdogan is a thorn in the eye of the people who exploit the world, and you will see that the major powers don't like Erdogan because of their position.